Hello, welcome to the tour of pleasure here in the Enchanted Kingdom of Hermione. I'm the Lord Chamberlain of the Enchanted Kingdom and your host for today, Zip Gun. And just watching microphonic fool feed us seals, watching a weird European hockey game, hanging with the old Emperor. I haven't had much to say. I've been out of commission for a while, not because anything's really wrong, but I haven't had much to say about much. I've been moving a lot of records and a lot of CDs, and we're compiling a crazy stop frame video of them, the Fool and I, and that'll come out in the fullness of time. I'm waiting on about 2 or 3 box sets I got to review, but I forgot about one that I had received a while back that excited me to death, and probably nobody else in the entire known universe. But well, maybe not. There's some people will be very excited. And this is a long story, so buckle up. If you followed my videos about my musical journey, and if you got as far as the one about classical music, you'll know that I came into classical music, or what is known as classical music, um, in a really weird, sideways, roundabout manner. I was a total kid, rock and roll all the way. In about 1970, I discovered jazz, but I didn't discover jazz through like Kind of Blue. I discovered it through like, you know, Charlie Hayden's Liberation Orchestra music and really crazy free jazz. And as a kid, I really gravitated towards weird stuff. I loved Satanic Majesties when it came out. I loved Revolution Number 9. It was new. It was exciting. I loved all the other stuff too, but those ones really thrilled me. And I was always looking for new stuff. And when I was about 10 or so, 1970-ish, I discovered switched on Bach, and that to me was what I called electronic music. Whereas in the parlance of academia, electronic music is a whole different thing. But I didn't know that. I was just a dumb kid. So one fine day, well, snooping through a record store that is long gone in Victoria, BC, a place called the Record Gallery, which was in a mall that is no longer there. Nothing exists of this place. Not the building, nothing. It's all been torn down and built back up. And the record gallery was run by this grumpy dude who really didn't have the time of day for me because I was a rock and roll kid. Now, Record Gallery was a great record store in that it was really old school and it reflected its owner's tastes very much. It still had listening booths. They didn't work anymore, but it's the first, maybe only record store I've ever been in my life that actually had listening booths. It was very heavy on the classical, very light on the rock and roll. The rock and roll seemed almost curated, and he did try very hard to cover all the bases in the classical world. And when I discovered quote unquote electronic music, I started looking around, and I would go to this guy's record store to look through his rock section, and I always find weird stuff there. There's one record, boy, I wish I would have bought it. It was a reprise record copy of Richard Thompson's Henry the Human Fly, sealed, of course, but with a promo sheet sealed inside the back cover. And from what I understand, they sold about 40 copies of that record in North America on reprise, and I almost bought it, but I wanted to hold out for the import, believe it or not, because that's the kind of record collector I am. I want to buy it from the country of origin, if at all possible. Silly, I know, I regret it to this day, but there you go. You live, you learn. One of the things I discovered in this record store was a record of, quote, electronic music by a guy named Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. And it was on the Deutsche Grammophon label. And to me, in my 10 or 11-year-old mind, maybe 12 by this point, Deutsche Grammophon was class. It was classy. It had that beautiful yellow plaque on the front of every record, and it just had this, and they always sounded good, and they were always, from my very limited experience of anything, it just seemed like a class act. And so when I saw this electronic music by Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, it's a piece called Contact with an E, and Gesang de Juglin, which I had no idea what that meant. I thought, well, this is pretty cool. And but it was kind of expensive. It was about $1.50 more, because it was a German import. That was pretty exotic. Not many import records in those days. Anyway, I bought the thing, and needless to say, expecting switched on Bach, I got Stockhausen, electronic music. So I think the understatement of the century would be to say that I had my mind blown, and I suddenly realized there was this whole universe of music out there that was quote unquote classical, but super weird, which is how I like it. And this was in the glory days of what is, I think, known by some anyways, as the avant-garde. And the avant-garde was when classical music tried to just get rid of all the rules. Is it even music? Everything became almost entirely theoretical. Sometimes the performances didn't even matter. John Cage did a piece 4 minutes and 33 seconds, which was 4 minutes and 33 seconds of silence. He just sat there and that was the piece. So this intrigued the hell out of me because it was so weird. And I wanted to find out more. And I liked the Deutsche Grammophon style. And so one day I was in the record gallery, roughly around the time I didn't buy the Richard Thompson record, so that makes it, 73 maybe? So I was 13, 14, 72, I think, Richard, Enter the Human Fly came out. But let's call it 73 because it probably had a bit of a lag. So I was probably 14, and in the record gallery you walk in the door, there's the classical, you'd sort of turn the corner, and there was the booths, there was the pop section, which was one big long bin. There was a bunch of miscellaneous stuff, world music and stuff at the end, which I don't think I ever looked at. And then if you turned around the corner, there was a rack on the wall. It wasn't a bin, it was a rack. And it was full of all kinds of odds and sods. And at the bottom, and the hardest place to get in the whole store, was a bunch of weird looking records. And one day I was bored looking through his store, like I have been known to do. And he didn't like me at all. I drove him nuts. I'd ask him too many questions. And he was apparently a rugby player. And the poor guy in the middle of a rugby match fell over from a heart attack. And that was it for his record store. But at any rate, I'm digging around his store, and I look in the bottom corner of this rack, which is, you got to walk in around the corner. And I notice some Stockhausen records. I go, ooh, what's this? So, hi. I don't even remember his name. I said, well, what's all this stuff? He goes, oh, that's the contemporary stuff. And I go, contemporary? What do you mean? The avant-garde stuff, the weird stuff. Weird? Oh, okay, I'm looking. So I get on my hands and knees, dig around, found a couple of Stockhausen records. I think almost all of which I subsequently bought sometime or another. But one intrigued me. Now remember, I'm a kid on an allowance. I don't have much money. Spent all my money on records. And there was a box set. Now, box sets are sexy, right? Box sets. Who doesn't like a good box set? So, anyway, there's this box set. $23, which is about a month's allowance for me. And it's this. Avant-Garde, Volume 4. And I'm like, Deutsche Grammophon. Look at that. That's edgy, man. What the hell is it? So I look on this. I think this was how it looked in the store. And I look, oh, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, cool. Oh, and a bunch of people I have never heard of. Which is not surprising because I probably would never have heard of them ever if I hadn't bought this box. But there's names: Silvano Busotti, Cornelius Cardew, Franco Evangelisti, Jean-Claude Frison, who never appeared in my engrams ever again, Vinko Globokar, I believe he's he was a Yugoslav composer then. I think he's Croatian. Roman Habenstock Ramati, Heinz Holliger, the great Swiss oboist and composer, Nicholas A. Huber, Leo Kupper, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, and Ezequiel Virasoro. I named my cat after him years later. This was 24 bucks. 6 records. $6 a record. Bit cheaper than I think it was the $8 for the regular Deutsche Grammophon. So I was really intrigued. It was all sealed, of course. Can't look at it. And I noticed it didn't have the yellow tops. This is what a weird kid I was. Is it really Deutsche Grammophon? Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. So curiosity got the cat. I had to buy the damn thing. Saved up my money, did a bunch of odd jobs, blah blah blah. I swear it took me a month. And I bought it and I took it home and I couldn't wait to get my hands on it. And it was extra cool. You have, these covers are just so cool. Now, here's a great note. I didn't know this forever, but Cornelius Cardew, who was what would you describe him as? A Marxist avant-garde composer from Britain, died under mysterious circumstances. He formed this Scratch Orchestra, which is an orchestra of people that didn't know anything about anything, amongst who included none other than Brian Eno. And there's some names on here: Kevin Byers, Michael Parsons, John Tilbury, some of the British avant-garde. Anyway, this is 2 paragraphs, as he calls them, of a piece he called The Great Learning. And one side is people chanting and drumming as loud as they can, and the other side is people kind of humming. And I don't have time to go into the whole concept of any of this stuff, to be quite honest. But suffice to say, it is pretty damned interesting. These are not in the order I want them in. The first one is Franco Evangelisti, The Box, the Session. Very strange. There's a rocket takes off in it. It's sort of like, what does he call this one again? He calls it, come on, get to the English, a mimic scenic action for 5 to 7 actors, voice, projector, small orchestra, and tape recorder, from an idea by Franco Nunes. So there you have it. The other side of this is Heinz Holliger's The Magical Dancer, which is attempt at an escape for 2 persons and 2 marionettes. So you get the general feel of what's going on here. This stuff is just way out. And there's a little bit of everything on these. Now, it's very heavily weighted for European stuff. Almost no. Cardew is English. Is there any American stuff on this at all? Idea. This is the one. Holliger's Sibeskesang, which is essentially an orchestral piece for oboe orchestra and Singstimmen. What is that? Is it a choir? Don't have my glasses on, can't read it. And I haven't played this piece in a long time. Spiral for a soloist is Heinz Holliger on oboe and Karl-Heinz Stockhausen playing a shortwave radio. It's loads of fun. If you like Stockhausen, you know what you're in for. Leo Kupper, Electropoem. Now, Electropoem is a riot. It's basically, now let me try and translate this. My translations are wretched, I know. Electropoem, 12 voix de jeunes filles et garçons, which I think means 12 voices of young boys and girls. Basically, it's people going for about 8 minutes. It's absolutely amazing. I've used it on millions of compilation tapes. Everybody thinks I'm out of my mind. It makes me laugh. Yeah, so then Ubriasati has a couple of pieces here. And it includes, if I remember correctly, yeah, look at this, I kept it. It's still, this is the score. Now this is where you're getting avant-garde, kids. That's the score to this piece. And, yeah. So anyway, I'm not going to go too much detail here because, I had no idea anything about this Volume 4 business. All I knew is that I had purchased this gold mine of extra weird music. My mom just shook her head. She was like, "What is this stuff? Monkeys could play this," she said. And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, maybe, I guess." But for, let me think now, most of the 70s, I had this and this alone out of this series. As I found out later, of course, I figured out it must be a series, because what's Volume 4 if there isn't Volumes 1 through 3, right? Anyway, fast forward to about 1985, and I had moved out to Toronto, following a young lady. Always a bad idea. And by that point, I had discovered a few of the first box set, and some of the second and third box sets. They had been released separately, and I remember seeing these kicking around in record stores hither and yon. You got to give Deutsche Grammophon credit. They tried to market this stuff. It is unmarketable. It's totally weird. Like, there's just nothing, it doesn't get weirder than this. And these were everywhere for $3.99. Polydor imported them to Canada. I'm from Canada, so, and I'm pretty sure they imported them to the States too. And they actually tried to sell this stuff. And the only guy they really got any traction on was Stockhausen, of course. So over the years, between about 1972, I guess, and 1985, I found a selection of the singles, because you could buy these singly. Now, this is the first series, and the first 3 series had this gradiated color scheme. Look at this, $4.99 I paid for this. Wow, I'm leaving that on because, and I'll get to this one later. Here we got Stockhausen Telemusic Mixtures. This is electronic music from Tokyo, 1970. This is a great record. Improvisazione by the Group Nuova Consonanza, which was a free improv group featuring the aforementioned Franco Evangelisti, who's a really weird dude, and none other than Ennio Morricone, the great film composer, on trumpet. And it's extra avant-garde weird. There's video on YouTube of these guys. You want to see it. There's Maurizio Kagel, who's an Argentine composer, who's he kind of had a real flare-up in the, look at this. Oh, it's got the delete chunk out of it. Nice. This one, ooh, Grand Prix du 10. This is Gruppen and Carré. Very important Stockhausen orchestral pieces for 3 and 4 orchestras. 3 orchestras for Gruppen, 4 orchestras for choirs. Here we have Vinko Globakar doing, which was essentially a solo trombone record. He writes a couple of crazy pieces. There's one of Berio's sequenzas is on this. Sorry, I'm fighting a flu bug here. And there's a Stockhausen called Solo for Melody Instrument, which I believe is for any old instrument that can play anything. There's a organ record, Ligeti, and One Allende Blin, and Kagel. And David Bedford, he is British, 2 Poems for Chorus. This is a choir record, avant-garde choir. Anyway, so I accumulated a bunch of these over the years. But then in 1985, in Toronto, on one of my junkets to the record stores of Toronto, I was in a back alley store, actually really nice little store. I remember it was in an old house, a very quaint little store, and they had both of these. And these were $25 each used. They're pretty dirty now, aren't they? Look these up on Discogs. They're worth a goddamn fortune. And, oh, look at, oh, okay, wait a minute. I've got extras of a couple of these then. Okay. This one had, I hate having to take them out, but you gotta. This one had Berndal Zimmermann, very important avant-garde composer. That has the group that has, what is this? John Cage. Um, there's a whole record. Oh, and Dieter Schnabel. That's a weird mix. But yeah, it was light on American. John Cage. They do cartridge music, winter music, Atlas Ellipticalis, and Dieter Schnabel's Gloss. I can't pronounce it. There's the Kegel. I'm looking at these twice. There's the obligatory electronic record by Gottfried Michael Koenig, Zoltan Ponkash. I'm sure I'm butchering his name. Reiner Rim. This is from somewhere. It looks like it's in Holland, Utrecht. And then the aforementioned telemusic mixtures on this. So this is volume 2. These were, as I said, available singly and in the box. And I never ever saw them in the box until I found these and bought them. So it's my assumption, and these are not going to go in without a fight, it's my assumption that the single copies were much more readily available than the boxed copies. This one has, okay, again, we've looked at Luke Ferrari. Luke Ferrari got really hip in the 90s and early noughts. Press Green #1. His Press Green series is really cool. Ligeti String Quartet, Earl Brown String Quartet, Rosenberg String Quartet by the LaSalle Quartet, a classic recording. Stimmung. Stimmung has come out a couple of different ways and is unique amongst these in that it always has the avant-garde thing on the side, even when they put it out with a different cover and it wasn't really part of any series. But this is the original. It's pretty cool. Roland Kine doing cybernetics, and what's not to love about this? Luigi Nono doing the unbelievably entitled Quattropunto Dialettico All'Mente, which last I checked means dialectric counterpoint of the mind. That'd be a great name for an album. And then you have Lejeune Hiller, who's very interesting. I got a great record of him programming a computer to create jazz. And Lucas Foss doing Paradigm. A really good piece. I really like Paradigm. It's good. A piece you can listen to. It's actually, a lot of the American stuff in these series was rather more listenable than some of the European. I mean, listenable. It was less weird. A lot of it was a bit more normal. Anyways, I have cherished these over the years. They have been the Rosetta Stones of my quest to discover all the good music that I can find. And I have been able to find the odd title here and there. Deutsche Grammophon has reissued them in their 2021 series. I believe they put a few of these out. And bought them the minute I could find them digitally, because a lot of this is very quiet music. Despite the fact that these are Deutsche Grammophon pressings, which are really good pressings, and I've kept these in really good shape since I was a kid, you still can hear the surface noise in the nearly silent sections, of which there are many. So imagine the squeals of delight that I emitted when I discovered that Deutsche Grammophon was going to put the whole bloody thing out as a box set on CD. Well, I think I peed in my pants just a little bit when I found out about that. 21 CDs. Yeah, isn't that great? And then I went, wait a minute. There's 24 albums. Maybe they cramped it. No. Sadly, and this is the only negative thing I'm going to say about this, the powers that be in Stockhausen land decided that the Telemusic Mixture record, the Stimmung record, and the Gruppenkare record could not be included in this for whatever fucking stupid reason. Never mind the fact that this series did an awful lot to promote the man's music and to make him a real hip figure in the late 60s, early 70s avant-garde. No, 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 no. They want to sell it to you on their little website where they charge you 25 bucks a CD for, their version of it, which I guess is fair enough, but it's shitty because it ruins what otherwise have been the box set of the year for me. I mean, just out of the park. And it's been very well done. It was a lot like 200 bucks. Not bad. 21 CDs. What do you want? The booklet is brief but informative. It these are often frustrating because it doesn't really tell you a whole lot that I didn't already know. Um, but my suspicion that only the fourth box was unavailable singly, because I never saw them available singly, and like I say, they didn't have the little yellow thing at the top, which was weird. And anyway, they get to the fourth volume in the booklet here, and they go, uh, indeed, this fourth volume, released only as a set, was to be the last. Then at the very end is a little note. 3 Stockhausen albums, which were part of the original Avant-Garde series, have not been included in this edition, as we respect the preference of the Stockhausen estate to abstain from such re-release, which I suspect means that they no longer have the rights to it, and Stockhausen's estate wanted too much money. I'm going to roll with that myself. Really well done book. Everything's, they give you the contents first, all in a big wad, and then they give you the individual notes. The individual notes are the same as on the LPs, and there are no additional notes. So, not a lot of work involved for the powers that be to put this out, get the artwork right, which was nice, again, it's nice and faithful. The back is sort of generic, but that's okay because the back on these is just generic as well. Sort of a generic Deutsche Grammophon, if you will. But they do have the lovely covers, and these covers were really eye-catching for the day. Like they were all produced by a guy named Carl Faust, who I don't know much about, and I'd love to learn more. But there's the beautiful rainbow of avant-garde weirdness for you. And it came out, this has been out a couple of months. I'm surprised I didn't review it. I think I must have been saving it or something. But if they would have, if Stockhausen's estate weren't such a bunch of dorks, this would be an A+ reissue that absolutely nobody would know about because it kind of snuck in. I'm on the mailing list for Deutsche Grammophon. So I get all this stuff in advance, and 90% of it is just junk. I don't want it. But then I said, well, avant-garde box. So I immediately bought it, and I am absolutely delighted with it, despite its one major shortcoming. Mercifully, I do have those on the vinyl still. And it's not like I'm going to get rid of the vinyls, I guess. And I guess if I really wanted to, I could buy them from Stockhausen's estate, but that would be kind of a cop-out to a guy who sounds like a bit of a jerk. But there you have it. And if you want to get into the European avant-garde of the late 60s, the great thing about this box is it was the very end of what would truly be considered the avant-garde era. Minimalism had just sort of maybe got started. There's been a bit of Terry Riley. Steve Reich had a record out in about 1970, I think. So minimalism was just around the corner, and it hadn't had any impact at all in Europe. This is pretty Eurocentric. But what it is for sure is avant-garde. And there's a lot of, if you're into contemporary classical music, there's composers here you'll never have heard of. And some of whom, like Roman Habenstock Ramadi, they were kind of names in their respective territories. But they never really got much traction in North America, and they're well worth hearing. There's a lot of good music out there from this era. A lot of very interesting music, really creative. You don't tap your toe to it the way you did at Einstein on the beach or something, but real different animal. And and Teaser, I thought this was just like, well, how can it get better? It does, but it's not here yet, so I can't review it. And there's another one that's not here yet, and I can't review it either, even though I've soaked in its companion piece. But I don't want to do a half a review, so I'll save those for later. There you go, Avant Garde box set. If you like weird, there's nothing weirder. There's just nothing weirder than this, and thought provoking and really interesting. If you remember, I did a video on the RZ editions, very similar ethos. So there you have it. Nice to be back. I'll come up with some more stuff soon, I hope. I've been kind of brewing up ideas for things, and but I do have a couple of good reviews coming up, and we're gonna have the big move video. Hopefully that will be entertaining. And until then, I'm just gonna keep on keeping on. Thanks a lot for watching. Hit the subscribe button. I will be back. Sometimes I take breaks. Sometimes I get bored. I don't make any money, of course. So it's, there's not that motivation to get the product out, if you will. I'm just doing this because I started it during COVID, and my friends told me, hey, this is really great. It's like I'm sitting there talking records with you. And I thought that's exactly what it's supposed to be. And I only really noticed how long it had been since I made a video because a friend of mine, who I don't talk to a lot, but a dear friend, emailed me and said, hey, are you okay? You haven't made a video in a while. So there you go. Rest assured, I'm okay. I'm back making videos, doing lots of stuff. And yeah, and I'm glad people take an interest. So that's why I like to do them. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you later. Take it easy.